In this video, I'm going to share with you 10 cybersecurity principles to follow. So whether you are a home user or you are there in the office, these are some principles that you ought to incorporate into your infrastructure, into your IT policies. Now, first on my list is to establish a defense system. So you want to implement things like firewalls, intrusion detection systems. Make sure that you have things like antivirus applications, anti-malware applications installed on your system to reduce your threat levels. The second tip is make sure that you are securing your IT system, your infrastructure by design. So here now you want to integrate security measures from the offset, from the get-go, when developing your infrastructure, so as to reduce vulnerabilities. You don't want to be caught in a situation where you're merely, being reactive to some threat that you are facing. The third point is to reduce your attack surface. So here now you want to minimize as much as possible any vulnerabilities that you may have within your system on your devices, which will lead to eventually your infrastructure being compromised. So what about things like disabling ports on your servers that are not needed, or disabling applications that totally uninstalling applications on your device that you do not use, making sure that you keep your devices up to date with the latest patches, for instance, making sure that you disable services that will run on your devices, so whether these are IoT devices or your laptop or your desktop, your client server systems. Make sure that you disable these systems so that they do not lead to any compromise of your infrastructure. The fourth tip is to use authentication. So here, as it is now, MFA is a big thing now. So use up MFA. Have multiple forms of authentication to verify that a user who may be logging on to your system, to your network, is actually an authorized person. The fifth thing that you may want to do, or should do rather, is that you want to reduce any single point of failure. So here you want to implement redundancies as much as possible into critical systems, so that if one component fails, that it does not bring down your entire infrastructure. Similarly, you want to make sure that you're having you have backup systems. So backup systems for your data, backup system for your backup power contingencies, so that, for instance, if there's a blackout, that your system is able to be kept up, or if there is a breach, let's just say that you have something like a ransomware, it should be that you have your data backed up elsewhere in the cloud, so that you have access to it. Tip number 6 is to establish a principle of least privilege, and these principles that I'm referring to here, that I'm making mention to here, it goes back to what I'd mentioned initially, that when you're designing your security system, that all of these are considerations that should be a part of that initial design. So what you want to ensure that you're doing is that you're granting users and applications only the minimum level of access permission that they need to perform their task or their functions. Nothing more than that. Now, this leads into tip number 7, which is to continue to assess user access rights. So there's no need for, let's just say, John to have access to the keys for the marketing department, or for the room for the server, things like those. These are things that you have to monitor. Similarly, what about you have a situation where Mary went off on vacation leave, she's a manager for the sales department, and so Jane was acting in her stead. Now Mary returns, Jane is no longer acting in that capacity, so there's no need for Jane to have the user access rights that she previously had, right? So you need to reverse all of those access privileges that she would have had. Now earlier I spoke to eliminating single points of failure. Now, tip number 8 is looking at eliminating single points of control. Now, in your organization, you definitely do not want to have a situation where you have any one person who has exclusive access to your infrastructure. Look at the situation. Suppose you have a situation now where you have just one person who, let's just say, has access to the server room. So that person has, the keys to the server room, for instance. And that person is somewhat disgruntled about whatever. What do you think can potentially happen? See what I'm saying? So you want to make sure that at any given time that you're and this, it comes back again to what I mentioned earlier, that initially when you are designing your security system, that these are things that are part of the consideration. So here, especially, the higher up you go and the more critical infrastructure is, it should be that you have multiple players who would be needed for access control, for instance. The 9th point is to keep it simple, and there's an acronym which is KISS, which means keep it simple, stupid. No, I'm not calling anybody stupid, but the thing about it is that when you're designing your security system, you really want to make sure that you keep the system as simple as possible. Look at it this way: if it is overly complicated and burdensome on persons, you may find that they may even find ways to circumvent the system. You don't want to have, in a situation like that, to try to keep it as simple as possible. And my 10th and final point is to harden your devices. So I somewhat alluded to this before. Now, in hardening your devices, disable features that you do not need. There are, for instance, a lot of security, well, not security, but privacy features nowadays in a lot of the applications that we use, which will, when you install these applications, by default, they may choose to share your personal information. Now, that's what I'm saying, that you want to go through your various applications and make sure that you disable these features, because you don't need to, especially if it is an organization, the infrastructure is a part of an organization, you do not want these features to be enabled and, be there, sharing information. So harden your devices as much as possible. You want to ensure that you are regularly ensuring that you install patches and updates, and that you would change your passwords regularly. Also, that the passwords conform to the policy, the IT policy of the organization. They should be up for a particular length, for instance, and they, should be, conform to whatever structure. Perhaps, having a combination of letters, or a certain amount of letters, certain amount of numerals, certain amount of special characters, for instance. All right. So I am, without a doubt, if you follow these principles, there's no guarantee that yes, your system will be 100% foolproof, and your system will not necessarily be compromised at any time. But certainly these 10 principles will significantly help to reduce your threat levels. If you have not yet subscribed to my channel, I really appreciate you becoming a subscriber. So go ahead, just take a second or two, hit that subscription button there, hit the notification bell while you're at it, so that when I drop these videos, upload new videos, you'll be automatically notified. Okay, so I'm out of here. I'm Roger. Keep safe, and see you again in the next video.